We've been talking about ethics and AI a lot recently at Aragon. A few of us saw the Google Assistant duplex demo at I/O. That's the one where the assistant makes a phone call to a hair salon to book an appointment using a very human-sounding natural language. My view is that the automated agent should identify itself as such. My reasoning is based on practicality rather than ethics, though. Humans tend to tailor their speech to their perceived audience. I think most people show some empathy and respond differently to children, the elderly or infirm, those with cultural or behavioral differences, or simply people like us who don't share our common body of knowledge. At least during a transition period where people are getting used to automated agents, I think it'll be helpful to avoid blurring the lines between human and machine. I'm glad that Google has said that in production, a duplex-enabled assistant would identify itself as a bot. We don't really need a bot to say, to interact with it. And eventually, these bots will be talking to each other, so we shouldn't dumb down their speech. A second ethics-oriented topic is more serious. How should autonomous vehicles interpret scenarios where there's no good outcome? The basic question comes down to this. If the AI-driven app guiding the vehicle needs to make a decision between multiple options where none result in 0 deaths or injuries, how should it prioritize the options? And should that part of the algorithm be visible to the buyer or user? And should it be tunable by the buyer or user? I was thinking about that as I drove my son to school this morning. It's his last day at high school. And we talked about how human drivers have to make these decisions, and sometimes it's a matter of self-interest versus a choice for the greater good. I told him about the first lecture I sat through in abnormal psychology years ago in college. My professor specialized in child psychology. He said the first things you have to establish are who has the problem and who's paying the bill. I don't have an answer for the ethical autonomous question, but with my son sitting next to me, I considered a few of the dimensions that would have to be considered. As a parent, I think that in any situation, I'd put my children first. But one day, there'll be passengers in cars without sentient drivers. Should an algorithm choosing between 2 or more negative outcomes act as an agent for the owner of the vehicle? In that case, it might consider liability, and frankly, people are not created equally when considering damages. Should it act on behalf of the individual who's paying for the ride? It could be the owner or one of the occupants, or a third party with different priorities. Or should it try to optimize the outcome, again, for the greater good of society? We already have an emerging class of video analytics apps that could provide the autonomous algorithm with data on the approximate age of the occupants, and possibly of any individuals associated with each of the outcomes, as well as other demographic data that could influence an economic decision. So this is where ethics, technology, and commerce intersect. What parameters should be considered? Who should have the rights to prioritize these parameters? And who should be able to see how the algorithm will evaluate various scenarios? Should the algorithm perpetuate the biases of the designer, the user, the owner, or any agency acting on behalf of the society in which it operates? We'll continue to research this question, so I welcome your input. Thanks.